What you're about to hear, the world won't say out loud, not on the news, not in the headlines, but it happened and it changed everything. There are moments in history when silence screams louder than words, when power is not proven by bombs, but by restraint, by precision, by purpose. And one night, not long ago, Iran did something that shook the very pride of its enemies, and the world watched, frozen, quiet, unwilling to admit what had just happened. This is not just a story about Iran and Israel. This is about strength without apology, about a nation the world tried to isolate, but instead it rose. It's about a warning that echoed louder than missiles ever could. And if you walk away before the end, you'll miss the truth they never wanted you to hear. So I invite you. No, I challenge you. Stay with me. Watch till the final second. Because this isn't just a speech. It's the silence after the storm. It's the night the world witnessed power and said nothing. And after today, you won't see it the same way again. Iran's history of endurance is unlike anything the modern world is prepared to understand. This is not a country that merely survives challenges. It absorbs them, transforms through them, and emerges with deeper purpose and sharper resolve. Its timeline is not marked in decades, but in millennia. From the mighty Achaemenid Empire that ruled a vast portion of the known world to the revolutionary upheaval in 1979 that stunned global superpowers, Iran has constantly rewritten its own narrative through the fire of resistance. Every attempt to destabilize it, from foreign invasions to coups backed by global giants, has only carved more determination into the collective soul of the nation. The world has watched this country endure war, sanctions, isolation, demonization, and economic suffocation. It has faced 8 long years of brutal conflict with Iraq, a war that most expected to break Iran's back, but instead only solidified its defiance. What was supposed to be its downfall became a crucible in which a new national identity was forged. That war didn't just build trenches and military strategy, it built resilience in the Iranian psyche. It taught a nation how to fight without needing permission, how to protect its future even when no one else would stand by it. Empires have tried to bend Iran to their will, but none have succeeded for long. The Mongols brought devastation. The British and Russians carved up its territory. The CIA toppled its government. But each time, Iran endured. Each blow only pushed the people closer to their cultural and spiritual core. They didn't forget. They didn't submit. They adapted. While the West calculated power through weapons and oil, Iran calculated power through memory, unity, and time. This is a country that plays the long game with the patience of a civilization that's seen empires rise and fall like waves in the ocean. It's this historical consciousness that makes Iran uniquely difficult to defeat. It doesn't react like others. It doesn't collapse under isolation. It adapts. It doesn't lose its identity in the face of westernization. It reclaims it. Time and time again, it has shown that pain is not its weakness, but its fuel. Even when broken economically, it builds internally. Even when outgunned militarily, it resists ideologically. This deep-rooted legacy of enduring hardship, of thriving under pressure, of reclaiming power through patience, this is the reason the West can't fully grasp why Iran doesn't break. Because Iran is not just functioning in the present moment. Iran is standing on centuries of scars victories, betrayals, and spiritual strength. It is not fragile, it is forged. Iranian culture is fundamentally shaped by a deep-rooted tradition of resistance, sacrifice, and spiritual endurance. It's not just about what the people believe. It's how they live, how they remember, and how they rise every time the world tries to push them down. From the epic tales of Persian poets to the rituals of mourning for historical martyrs like Imam Hussein, Iranian society has internalized the idea that struggle is not a misfortune. It is an honor. This belief system creates a population that views hardship as a divine test and resilience as a moral obligation. That's why sanctions don't demoralize them the way they're expected to. That's why isolation doesn't trigger national surrender. It triggers self-reliance and unity. Every attempt to pressure Iran economically, politically, or militarily is met not with collapse, but with consolidation. The people are taught from a young age that pain and progress are often interlinked. The real change and real strength do not come from ease, but from enduring what others cannot. This mindset has been passed down for generations, from the battlefield of Karbala to the streets of Tehran. It's in the chants, the slogans, the songs of resistance, and the tears shed for lost lives that fuel a deeper purpose. Iranian culture doesn't shy away from grief or sacrifice. It embraces them as part of a sacred journey toward justice, freedom, and self-determination. The result is a nation that can absorb an immense amount of suffering without losing its sense of direction. And that unnerves global powers. Because how do you defeat a people who have normalized struggle? How do you break a spirit that sees martyrdom as victory and patience as strength? Western leaders often miscalculate Iran's ability to endure because they assume the rules of political pressure and social exhaustion apply equally everywhere. But in Iran, pressure doesn't only trigger protest. It also triggers poetry, prayer, and purpose. Cultural identity in Iran is armor. It's not fragile or shallow. It's thick with centuries of philosophy, faith, and fight. The media often paints Iran as backward or extremist, but they never talk about the depth of its intellectual and spiritual traditions. They don't mention that this is a land where resistance is romanticized, where defiance is considered dignity, and where standing alone is seen as standing on principle. This culture of resilience is not something you can sanction away. It is not something you can bomb into submission. It's deeply embedded into how the people view the world and their place in it. When a population views pain as a sign of meaning and isolation as a badge of integrity, then no external force, no matter how powerful, can truly defeat them. They carry their resistance like a legacy, and they wear their sacrifices like a crown. Iran's strategic self-reliance and innovation have played a pivotal role in making it resistant to defeat, especially by Western powers that often rely on economic and technological superiority to subdue nations. Faced with decades of sanctions, embargoes, and attempts to isolate it from global markets and systems, Iran made a critical decision. It chose not to beg for inclusion, but to build from within. This wasn't just an economic shift. It was a declaration of independence in a world dominated by dependency. Iran understood early on that if it wanted to survive and assert its sovereignty, it couldn't rely on the very systems designed to control it. So instead of collapsing, it pivoted towards self-reliance. One of the most striking examples of this strategy is Iran's scientific and technological progress under pressure. While much of the world expected Iran to fall behind without access to Western tech and expertise, the country turned inward and invested in local talent, universities, and research. It developed its own aerospace industry, medical advancements, and a nuclear program that stunned the world. The more it was isolated, the more determined it became to prove that it could stand on its own feet. Iranian engineers, scientists, and innovators rose to the challenge, not just to survive, but to compete. This wasn't innovation born of luxury or comfort. This was innovation born of necessity, of survival, and of pride. Iran's defense industry is another domain where this self-reliance is profoundly evident. Blocked from buying advanced weapons from the West, Iran began developing its own. Today it produces sophisticated drones, missiles, cyber capabilities, and defensive systems that rival those of more established military powers. This capacity was not handed to them. It was built block by block, often in the shadows, under surveillance, sabotage, and attack. And yet Iran persisted. It invested in asymmetrical warfare, built regional alliances, and created a strategic doctrine that doesn't depend on conventional power, but on smart, calculated resistance. Even in the energy sector, where most oil-rich countries rely heavily on foreign investment and infrastructure, Iran developed domestic refining and energy technologies. It turned toward barter trade, strategic partnerships outside the Western sphere, and alternative financial systems to bypass sanctions. This level of adaptability in the face of sustained pressure is rare, and it's a reminder to the world that when a nation chooses to build instead of beg, when it transforms pressure into productivity, it becomes nearly impossible to control. This innovation through resistance model is what makes Iran so difficult to defeat. It doesn't just survive sanctions, it grows around them. It doesn't crumble under isolation, it crafts new alliances. It doesn't sit idle waiting for change, it becomes the change. That mindset, that national DNA of defiance and development is what turns Iran from a target into a force. A country like that doesn't ask for a seat at the table, it builds its own. Iran's influence extends far beyond its borders, not through colonization or economic domination, but through ideology, alliances, and cultural solidarity. While many nations rely on brute force or global trade power to assert dominance, Iran has mastered a different kind of strength. Regional influence built on shared beliefs, resistance narratives, and political synchronization. From Lebanon to Syria, Iraq to Yemen, Iran has quietly but powerfully established itself as the backbone of a network of movements, militias, and governments that align with its vision of sovereignty, anti-imperialism, and Islamic identity. This isn't accidental or opportunistic. It's a deliberate strategy that turns ideology into influence. The West often labels these alliances as proxies, dismissing them as puppets. But the truth is more layered. Iran's approach isn't about controlling others. It's about empowering groups that already feel oppressed, isolated, or under threat. In Hezbollah, for example, Iran found not just a militant group, but a symbol of resistance against Israeli occupation. In Iraq's Popular Mobilization Forces, it saw partners who understood the cost of war and the value of self-determination. These aren't just military allies. They are ideological kin. They carry the same wounds, the same memories of betrayal by global powers, the same drive to reclaim their voice in a world that often silences them. This web of alliances creates strategic depth for Iran that few in the region possess. If you strike Iran, you don't just face Iran, you face a region that remembers what it means to bleed together. This reality forces even the most powerful militaries to think twice before escalating. Iran's power is multiplied by the alliances it has fostered in places where the West often fails to understand the local culture, history, and pain. Iran steps into that void with something deeper than aid or weapons. It steps in with shared purpose. That's a kind of power no sanctions can erase. Beyond militias, Iran invests in cultural influence too. Media channels, educational programs, and religious networks that stretch across borders. It supports schools of thought, charities, and political discourse that challenge the Western narrative and offer an alternative rooted in Islamic pride and resistance. This is not just about winning battles. It's about shaping hearts and minds. That's why Iran's influence feels so permanent. It is seated in ideology, not just strategy. The more its enemies try to suppress it, the more its voice echoes through the voices of others who've suffered similar fates. This interconnected web of support isn't just strategic, it's spiritual. It's built on the belief that standing for something bigger than yourself, even in the face of death, is the greatest kind of power. Iran's influence doesn't need massive fleets or sprawling embassies. It grows in the silence between bombs, in the prayers after injustice, in the stories of people who refuse to be erased. That's why defeating Iran isn't just about confronting a nation. It's about confronting an idea, one that has already taken root far beyond its borders. Iran's psychological warfare and its mastery of narrative control have become some of its most potent weapons in a world where perception often shapes reality more than physical action. While many powerful nations pour billions into military campaigns or propaganda, Iran operates with a far more subtle and effective tool. It shapes the way people think, feel, and react, both within its borders and far beyond. Through media, speeches, symbolism, and strategic silence, Iran has created a psychological fortress that is difficult to penetrate and nearly impossible to dismantle. It doesn't just fight wars on the battlefield. It fights them in the minds of its enemies and allies alike. One of the clearest examples of this is Iran's ability to remain composed under intense pressure. When the West expects a nation to react with panic or desperation, Iran responds with patience, calculation, and a sense of quiet dignity. That calm unnerves adversaries. It creates uncertainty. It disrupts the script that global powers are used to controlling. By refusing to act predictably, Iran keeps its enemies guessing, which in itself becomes a powerful deterrent. In a world driven by instant reactions and media-driven responses, Iran's restraint becomes a psychological chess move, always planning several steps ahead. Symbolism also plays a massive role in Iran's psychological strategy. Martyrdom, sacrifice, resistance, these are not just political ideas in Iran, they are deeply embedded cultural codes. When Iran honors a fallen general or a resistance leader, it's not just mourning, it's sending a message that death is not defeat and that suffering only strengthens resolve. This ability to turn loss into legacy keeps morale high, even in times of national hardship. It embeds the struggle into the very soul of the people. That's a kind of power that missiles can't destroy. Iran's use of media, both state-run and regional, is another powerful tool. It doesn't just report news. It crafts narratives. Whether it's Al-Alam, Press TV, or its influence in outlets across Lebanon, Iraq, and beyond, Iran ensures its version of events gets heard, especially by those who have learned to distrust Western narratives. It offers a lens that focuses not just on politics, but on dignity, betrayal, and resistance. It paints a picture of global injustice and places Iran at the center of the fight against it. That story resonates far more powerfully in the hearts of the oppressed than any economic policy ever could. Finally, Iran's ability to hold its people together through decades of sanctions, war threats, and internal challenges is a testament to how powerful psychological unity can be. It constantly reaffirms a national identity rooted in resilience. The people aren't just citizens, they are participants in a long, sacred struggle. That psychological cohesion makes subversion difficult, revolution unlikely, and surrender unimaginable. Iran may not have the flashiest weapons or the wealthiest economy, but it has mastered the art of making its enemies feel uncertain, its allies feel loyal, and its people feel unbreakable. That's the true battlefield today. Not one of tanks and bombs, but of belief, perception, and psychological strength. Iran's ability to adapt under pressure and evolve despite sanctions, isolation, and external aggression is one of its greatest strengths and a key reason the West cannot defeat it. Most nations crumble under prolonged economic warfare, political isolation, and relentless psychological operations. But Iran, rather than bending to foreign will, transforms these obstacles into fuel for innovation, internal unity, and strategic evolution. Every attempt to corner Iran has only made it more self-reliant, more calculated, and more determined. This resilience has become a part of its national identity, etched into the minds of its citizens and leaders alike. When sanctions attempted to strangle Iran's economy, the nation didn't just protest or plead. It responded by building alternative systems. It strengthened domestic industries, invested in local production, and developed parallel financial and trade routes. It built partnerships with countries willing to bypass Western frameworks, creating economic ecosystems that didn't depend on traditional Western approval. Whether it's growing its own pharmaceuticals, building indigenous missile and drone technology, or expanding nuclear research, Iran turned the blockade into a laboratory for self-sufficiency. What was meant to break Iran ended up training it for independence. On the military front, this same principle of adaptation has made Iran unpredictable and therefore hard to defeat. Instead of relying on traditional warfare, Iran built an asymmetric warfare strategy. It knows it cannot compete toe-to-toe with superpower militaries in open combat, so it became a master of indirect engagement. Through proxy forces, cyber warfare, guerrilla strategies, and calculated response, it learned when to strike, when to wait, and when to say nothing at all. This adaptability gives Iran a unique strategic edge. It operates by its own rhythm, refusing to be lured into traps or rushed into missteps. Even in the realm of diplomacy, Iran has shown that isolation doesn't mean silence. It has leveraged every platform from regional summits to the United Nations to tell its story, challenge double standards, and shift public perception. And in recent years, it has forged deeper ties with powers like Russia, China, and many in the global South, building coalitions that act as counterweights to Western hegemony. Iran's diplomatic survival is not just about resistance, it's about knowing how to pivot, how to recalibrate, and how to engage on its own terms. Culturally and socially, Iran has managed to hold on to its identity while gradually evolving from within. It has a society that debates, that protests, that questions, but ultimately, when threatened from the outside, comes together. That dynamic tension is not a weakness. It's a sign of life, of movement, of evolution. No regime survives decades of global pressure unless it is capable of internal transformation. Iran is not static. It shifts, adjusts, and prepares for the next phase, always learning from every sanction, every strike, every diplomatic slight. This ability to evolve, to learn in real time, and to emerge stronger after each blow is why Iran remains undefeated. Its adaptability is not just survival, it is strategy. The more it is tested, the sharper it becomes. The more it is pressured, the deeper it digs into its own strength. And that, above all, is what makes it a force the world cannot break. In the end, what makes Iran unconquerable isn't just its weapons, alliances, or slogans. It's its spirit. It's the unwavering belief that no matter how hard the world tries to silence it, it will speak louder through its actions, its resilience, and its history. Iran has faced every kind of storm: economic warfare, global isolation, psychological pressure, military threats, and instead of falling, it rose stronger each time. This isn't the story of a perfect nation. It's the story of a people who refuse to be defeated, a nation that turns pain into purpose and pressure into progress. This speech wasn't about sides or politics. It was about recognizing strength where the world refuses to see it, the kind of strength that doesn't always make headlines, but leaves a mark history can't erase. Thank you for staying till the end. I hope this message awakens something deeper in you, a new lens to look through, a new fire to carry. Stay strong, stay aware, and keep questioning what the world tells you. May you walk forward with clarity and courage. Good luck on your journey, and thank you for listening.